Hello, everyone. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Passionate Rural Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Our mantra is to educate, enlighten, and entertain. The views of the guest may not represent those of the host of the station. Folks, this is an extra special show today because I have two guests today that are very special. I am so honored to do what I do, and I'm going to tell you folks, one of the reasons why I do my show, and I'm so passionate about what I do, is because I wish I had resources available to me that are available now when my husband was alive. I wish I knew back then what I know now, and that's why I'm passionate about giving you, the audience, resources to help you have a better caregiving journey, whatever journey you're on. I want you to have a better quality, and that's why I'm passionate about what I do. And with me today is Dr. Andrea Sankar, and she is with CM Cassady, who wrote this book. It's the third edition, Dying at Home, a Family Guide for Caregiving. And I'll tell you right now, get this book immediately after you hear this interview. This is a book for everyone to have, whether you're a caregiver or not, because I'll tell you what, folks, you eventually will be a caregiver. And this book is a jewel. It's a treasure to have this information. And I'm going to let Dr. Andrea Sankar and CM Cassady tell a little bit about themselves because they could say it better than I can. Who would like to go first?
Caitlin, why don't you go first?
Oh, okay. Well, I am so happy to be here, Betsy. It is such an honor, and it was such an honor to come along and co-author with Dr. Sankar for the third edition. I actually knew about this book before I even met Dr. Sankar, the previous editions, and I, as a caregiver early in my life, even before I became a hospice social worker and even before I started to research death and dying, I knew how important it was for people to have this information. And I was just so impressed that an anthropologist had written this book and saw how important it was. So imagine how honored I was when she let me rewrite the third edition with her. So in my research, in my personal life, and in my professional life, I have been a caregiver and worked with those who are dying and those who take care of those who are dying. And so I will tell you it's an honor to be here, but also even to be involved in this book, which I do feel is very, very important, much like you, Betsy.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Sankar.
Well, I came at this project from two different directions. First, as a medical anthropologist, I was very involved in the study of AIDS when the epidemic first hit the United States. And my particular interest was how people with AIDS were cared for. And at the time I was doing this research, my own mother became sick with cancer and was dying. And my sisters and I undertook to take care of her. And at that time, the three of us were all young mothers, full-time jobs, and we didn't have a lot of support. Our husbands, of course, were helping us, but in the community there wasn't much support. Hospice was voluntary, and it was something we really wanted to do, and it was so difficult. And so after my mother died, my sisters, Suzanne and Pamela, said to me, this is your research area. You should write a book about this because of what we've went through and what we've learned. You can share it with others. So that was the beginning of this initial version of the book and of the research and all the in-depth interviews that I did. And then later we've added many interviews, and that's how the book came to be.
We need to have more discussions about end-of-life care, don't we? I've talked about this on my show. My show is actually 5 years this month, and I have had many guests to talk about, end-of-life care planning. We plan everything else. Why don't we plan end-of-life care? What we want it to look like, how we want our, memorial or even funeral. What does dying look like? And I'm so glad now there is more education in that field on social media where hospice nurses are talking about hospice. They're talking about what the dying process looks like. And I think if people knew about that, they wouldn't be so scared. They wouldn't be so shocked when they witness.
Yeah, Betsy. I agree with you. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the, somebody asked me recently, like, what can we do? What can we do to help people know and understand more about this, to help people know what's coming or tell them how important it is? I said, as simple as it sounds, you can talk about it. You can talk more about it. You can normalize talking about planning for dying and what you would want and what your loved ones would want. Because even though the research is a little ho-hum, it's a little out there still on advanced directives and how well things are actually followed, having those conversations is what I really believe in, and opening up that line of communication to talk about what you want to happen, what you expect to happen, what dying might look like, and who you think is going to care for you and how you want them to care for you. Because opening up that line of communication and starting to talk about it and normalizing that, I think that's the beginning of making the process just a little bit easier and changing your own family culture, to be honest.
Absolutely.
And it's not just family culture, too. I mean, one of the more surprising things in the interviews that we did, caregivers, we profile 18 different caregivers. There were family members who were helping take care of the dying person. There were 3 physicians, and those 3 physicians had never actually seen someone die. It's very rarely taught as a formal course in medical school. It's an elective. So you can go all the way through medical school and probably have seen a dead person, but you may never have been involved in the care of the dying. So it's one, obviously families and, everybody in society needs to be talking about this, but I also think that professionals, the physicians, need to have more awareness of what it is so that sometimes they're the ones who have to initiate the conversation and they have a better understanding of what it is that they're beginning to talk to people about.
Oh, absolutely. I had to share this story. When my husband was up in the hospice unit in the hospital, the hospice doctor said that after, I think it was the age of 65, he said they start talking about, end of life, start talking about it. And I said, why are you waiting until that long? That should be started way before. And I said, on my show, I talk about these things. He said, keep on doing it. I'll make my job easier because, a doctor's visit's only like 15 minutes. And
right.
They have to cover a lot of topics, a lot of concerns. And I think that in my own personal experience, I worked as a nurse. Yes, I did see people die. I never saw anyone die like my husband did. And I wish I knew more, what to expect. But when I would ask the doctor, how long does Matt have? He said, I don't know. But I knew that when Matt was near the end. As a matter of fact, my own hospice experience was not too swift. I kept telling the hospice that Matt was dying, and they didn't believe me because he was awake, he was alert somewhat, and eating, but he was walking around being terminally agitated. And I think, I've always been ahead of my time, but I think eventually I would like to see hospices all over the world be more knowledgeable that not everyone fits a textbook picture of somebody in bed dying. Some people are, I believe, are walking around and dying. And that was the case with my husband. And that's why they didn't believe me.
It certainly does happen, especially with terminal agitation. And, this is something that, Dr. Sankar mentioned, that she took care of her mother years ago with her sisters, and that hospice was still voluntary, and, how difficult that was. But, I took care of my grandmother who died this summer, and we had lots of resources. And you know what? Gosh darn it, it was still really hard. And so I think that people, and with my grandmother, she had also terminal agitation. I was in a similar position. People were saying like 3 weeks, and I was saying, I know you know medicine, but I know her, and sometimes we see things, and especially with terminal agitation as a social worker, I saw a lot of folks who were terminally agitated, unfortunately, and it does sometimes look a little different. We have these trajectories, and we like to talk about what sort of signs and symptoms you see in a normal dying process, but the truth is not everyone's the same, and sometimes you have to be an advocate for that person, especially when you know them best, and that terminal agitation can be kind of confusing because it looks a little different for everybody. It looks just a little as different as the individual, as they might say.
Oh, absolutely. And I tell you, one of the many things I like about your book is that you give resources in your book. This is a phenomenal treasure trove of not just information, but of resources that can help and be a benefit to those who read it. This is just phenomenal. I have to ask you, Dr. Sankar, how long did it take you to write this book the first time with all this information?
The first time, this had there were many more resources, partly in this recent edition, partly because we know so much more about it, and now that hospice is a benefit from Medicare and Medicaid and private insurance, there's more attention of the healthcare industry on the dying process. As a result, there are a lot more specific agencies and resources, and the data is out there to be able to connect to people in a better way. So this last version, we were writing it during COVID, took almost 3 years to write. I think the first version probably took 1.5 years.
Wow. How did you find the people to interview?
Well, that was an interesting experience. Part of it, we put ads up in, bereavement newsletters, hospices. We gave them flyers. They passed out our flyers. Sometimes it was a process, what we call in anthropology a snowball sample. So we would interview somebody, and they'd say, my aunt just had this experience, and we would interview that person. We interviewed actually many more people than the case studies that appear in the book. We picked representative case studies for that. But we interviewed people around the country for this. Sometimes we would do that in person. Sometimes we would do it on Zoom or simply over the phone.
I think it's so important, and I can't say this enough, to know what to expect. Like, some people don't know, the difference between palliative care and hospice care. What does hospice care do? I'm in many different support groups, and people think that hospice is going to be in their home 24/7, and they're shocked to find out, no, you're going to be giving that medication. And it depends on the hospice that you have, I guess, in what state you're in. But people just really don't know what hospice does. They think hospice is going to be there 24/7, and that's not the case. I know with my own experience, when the medication wasn't working, and Matt really did need to have one-to-one care, more care than I could provide, I had to really advocate to get him up to that hospice unit in the hospital because he needed to be medicated, heavily medicated, and to be made comfortable. And I was definitely a big mouth. I'm a little person with a big mouth. But I had to advocate for Matt, and I always encourage people to advocate for their loved ones. What I wish I did different, Dr. Sankar and CM, is I wish I had someone to help me navigate the process of choosing a hospice. Would you recommend that for people?
Yes. I mean, the more help you have in trying to set up the hospice care, set up in-home care, the better. One of the reasons we wrote this book and tried to give as accurate a depiction of what it's like to actually care is so that people can get a better picture of just how difficult this is. There's a financial incentive on the part of the hospitals to get people out of the hospital and into the home because they're not being reimbursed for terminal care in many cases. So you can be told as the caregiver, oh, you can manage this. But in fact, it's really, really difficult. And as the main caregiver, you're really focused on the dying person. You're not focused on like calling 3 or 4 different agencies and comparing the services they offer and checking their references. So somebody who can help you with that and that can be another family member or a friend, is really important. And in fact, in general, one of the points we really want to emphasize here is this is very challenging, and an individual caregiver would have a great deal of trouble doing this themselves. They really need a support network in order to be able to do it. And as you just pointed out, hospice care is not 24/7. So some people have an extensive family network that comes in and helps. Some people have the finances to hire people. But the caregiver, the main caregiver, is often focused on the well-being of the dying person. They don't have the resources to supervise the different support people who are coming in, and that's where another person or, sometimes you hire somebody as a care manager can help set that system up.
Yes, and I really do highly recommend that. That's one area that I wish, if I could do it again, that I would do that. I tell people, don't wait until you're at the end of your rope to start looking at hospices. Plan ahead. And that way, of course, there's more knowledge now than there ever was before. But definitely, if you can afford to hire someone, I highly recommend it. And that's why I highly recommend buying this book, which will help the individual who reads this. You talk about so many things in your book, so many topics, living wills, just managing pain. How important is that? There's so many topics. This is a very comprehensive book, and I could be here really all day raving about your book. I would like to know if you could explain to people, because some people will say, well, what's the difference between palliative care and hospice, and which one should I use?
Well, I'd be happy to take that one, Betsy.
Sure.
Having worked in hospice for years, this was a common thing that came up, and I tried in one of the hospitals I worked in when I was working in a hospital. We tried to actually get a palliative care team started. So this is very near. This difference is important and very near and dear to my heart. So to palliate a symptom is to take that symptom away, to take care of just the symptom. And so when we talk about palliative care, we're talking about treating symptoms and not the disease process itself. So if you are having pain, if you are having constipation, if you are having nausea, that is part of your disease process or the treatment from it even, which is the case for a lot of folks who have cancer, then you can have palliative care, whether or not you have a terminal prognosis of 6 months or less with a natural course of your disease yet. Now, when you do come to that time where 1 or 2 doctors, depending on your situation, say that you, with a likely course of your disease with no aggressive treatment, if sometimes that's no longer available, you have 6 months or less to live, that's what's likely, then that is when you are eligible for hospice. Now, some people are ready before that. Most people aren't ready until well after that time. But hospice, then comes in when you're done with that aggressive treatment. So they still take care of your symptoms, and hospice is palliative care. It's under the umbrella of palliative care. They still take care of your symptoms, but hospice is when curative care is either not an option or someone has chosen not to have curative care anymore or to try to stop the disease process. They're both all about taking care of symptoms, managing symptoms from disease process or treatment, but hospice is the one where you're going to have stopped curative care for what we call the terminal diagnosis or the disease that will eventually end your life.
Okay, I have to ask you a question, Sam, because at the time, my husband died in 2020, and at that time, I didn't even think about palliative care. Can someone, it wasn't even mentioned to me, can someone who has any sort of dementia, can they be on palliative care, or does it depend on the situation?
You know, I think so, Betsy. I think it really, like you said it just now, it depends on the situation. For a lot of folks, you know, my maternal grandmother, actually, when I was a teenager, I helped care for her, and she died of complications related to Alzheimer's disease. We don't actually know what, because hospice wasn't available for dementia then when she died in early 2004, I believe it was, 2003. And so I think that now thinking back, like, she had some symptoms. She had some symptoms that could need palliative care, but that actually wasn't available to her, so we just tried our best to keep her comfortable. Is palliative care known for treating dementia? Not so much, but like you said, I think it really just depends on the person and what other disease process is also going on, because sometimes people don't just have dementia, right? There's other things going on.
Right.
I think that the trick is to say, are they comfortable or not, right? And if you knowing that person, especially with dementia, is really important to say, I know that they're uncomfortable. Something's wrong. Their body's tense. They don't make this face. You know, they're groaning in their sleep or something like that. Then that might be an indication that an assessment for palliative care could be appropriate.
Well, thank you. That's great to know. I just interviewed 2 weeks ago, a week or two ago, time goes by so fast, a pediatric palliative care doctor, which was really interesting, and he's very big on, advocacy, because there's such bias against palliative care, even in the medical community. And people should know, what's available to help them. And that's why, I know it might sound redundant here, but that's why your book is just a treasure trove. Like I said, so much information to help the caregiver. I would buy this book if I wasn't a caregiver, because eventually you're going to be a caregiver, especially if you're a baby boomer like I am. I've been a caregiver, and eventually I'm going to need one. But just a book to explain the dying process, what to ask for. You talk about managing pain. You talk about managing, so many different areas that a person will need. It's just financial, right? Living wills. You even talk about the medical assisted dying, and people might get upset about that I mention that, but that is available in, well, not all states, but, people get into.
It's available in your state, Betsy. You're in New Jersey, right?
Is it? Yes.
Yep, it is legal in New Jersey.
Yeah, there was problems with that. Somebody was suing somebody over that, but I feel this way, Dr. Sankar and CM, that's an individual choice. Now, I personally couldn't do it, but that doesn't mean I'm going to say you can't do it. Because when you're in pain, and anyone who's been in pain, sometimes you wish you would die to be relieved from that pain. And, it's just such an individual choice. and I don't think we should take that away from somebody. It's very tricky, as you know, when it comes to someone with dementia, getting that, because
it's not available for dementia, not anywhere in the
United States. So that is another option. But just you even list books in your book to read, and actually one of them. This is funny. Well, not funny, but it's ironic. The Accidental Caregiver, Kimberly Frazier. I interviewed her a couple of years ago. It's such a wealth of information. How important it is, whoever wants to answer, to manage pain. Because sometimes the doctors or hospice, such as was in my husband's case, didn't believe that Matt had a headache or could be in pain, which is
very
ridiculous
to hear that.
Yeah,
pain is one of the most important and most challenging aspects of hospice care. We've come so far in our ability to both identify the source of pain and to address it in terms of terminal care. So, advances have been significant, but it's not foolproof. And it is sometimes the case that people are hospitalized because the hospice cannot manage the pain. So that is got to be, one of the most important things that hospice can do is to manage the pain for the dying person so they're comfortable. And if the caregiver feels that that's not happening, then they need to talk to their primary care physician and see about rehospitalization.
Absolutely. I was, I have a hospice from hell experience, unfortunately, and the social worker from the hospice came to my house and told me, nobody calls as much as you do. Why are you calling so much? And I said, well, I'm my husband's advocate, and I'll call as much as I want till there's a solution to the problem. I said, I'm telling you medicine's not working, and you're giving more of the same, which doesn't make any sense to me. Then she tried to gaslight me and to tell me it was my fault that I'm not giving the medication correctly, which then I had to put her in her place and tell her I know how to give medication. I'm very well experienced in giving medication. And I said, I'm telling you, it's not working. And I told her that Matt, who never complains or never complained, said clearly, I have a headache. And she said, no, he couldn't have a headache. That's the Seroquel. He probably has noises in his head. I said, who are you to tell me that he can't have a headache? Do you know what a dying brain feels like? Nobody does. So I think it's very important to really, and I always say this, to advocate for your loved one and to make it known, if the medicine's not working or side effects, to tell your hospice team. And people don't know it, they can't change hospices. It was just a little too late in the game for Matt, for me to change hospices. But when he went up there, after I had to threaten him with removing him from that hospice and calling up the regional director, they put him up there. And then after 2 days, they said to me, Betsy, now we see what you're talking about. He had a 1-to-1. I said, well, why would you think I'm making this up? I know when someone's agitated. And it just was not, it was complete opposite of what it should be. And there's many good hospices around. There's many good hospice nurses, wonderful. And the work they do is the work of angels as far as I'm concerned when you get the right ones. And I can't really impress enough. Interview ahead of time. Ask questions ahead of time. And just really be informative. And this is why I really like having guests like you on my show to share the information and to have this book, because so many people don't know what the dying process looks like. You know, the breathing, the death rattle, what to look for. Also with food intake. You know, I guess it's just human nature to want to feed somebody, you know, to make them feel better, but they don't need food at the end of life. And a lot of people don't realize that. Could you think about that?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why we have one whole chapter that is devoted to actually describing the specific death process. It sounds like you had an awful experience, and I'm really sorry to hear that. And those things happen. Obviously, it's a big country, and there's a range of quality in terms of the services that are delivered. But we do, I agree with you completely that one of the ways that caregivers can be more in control of the situation is if they understand what might be coming. And as you said earlier in the show, there's a range of how people die, and there's a range of behaviors. So it's not like there's just like these are the clear sets of symptoms. Part of what we want to do is to prepare people that, you know, it's not like on TV. As you noted previously, people just don't close their eyes and go to sleep. Maybe a few people do, but there's a lot of different ways in which people end up actually dying. And we wanted to give people as many details as possible so that both that they might recognize what's happening to them in those details, but also that they have a pretty good grasp of the fact that there's no standard behavior and that they can't expect to see a standard behavior.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I think the more informed people are, the better off they will be in their experience of someone dying, either at home or if they do have to be in a hospice care facility or a hospital unit. I just wish that the knowledge was out there 5 years ago. And that's why I tell caregivers, educate yourself. Education is so essential and having a better caregiving journey for you and for your loved one. And, you know, I felt guilty in a way that Matt was having high fevers, and then I found out, high fevers is normal when you're dying. And then I felt bad that he wasn't having IV fluids, and then, you know, it was explained that I don't need the fluids. It would actually be more traumatic for them. See, if people knew this, they would know, they wouldn't be as scared, or they wouldn't feel guilty. And caregiver guilt is real. It's a real problem after caregiving. And I had it myself, and I see other caregivers. You know, they think, if I would have known this, or I should have done this, I should have done that. When, unfortunately, with diseases such as Alzheimer's or other dementias, I'll mention because that's what my husband had, they're going to die no matter what you do. That's just a fact. But to make their journey comfortable and to give them the best end-of-life care experience is you have to educate yourself. And that's it. Now, I'm a Jersey girl, so I might sound a little blunt, a little harsh, but that's the truth. Knowledge is power, as they say. So I recommend everyone to be knowledgeable.
Yeah, Betsy, and like you said, you had to be an advocate, right? And when you need to be an advocate, you know, you hope that you don't need to advocate certainly as much as you did, but when you need to be an advocate, it really, really helps to have that knowledge already because, like you said, there were so many things you didn't know were normal, and understanding those things can be normal, and understanding your person's experience of that, and you know that you are the person who knows them best, even though you don't maybe have the medical knowledge. Now, you as an LPN did, but you know most people don't have the medical knowledge. But for you to know what could be wrong and have that knowledge and understand what's happening with them puts you in a much better position to advocate.
Yes.
One of the things that we discuss in the book is we suggest that caregivers might want to keep a notebook. And partly what that achieves, not only does it help you remember all the different things you did and the symptoms you're observing and the behavior in the dying person, but then when you're interacting with the healthcare profession, if you have a very clear record or a log that you've kept of the behaviors and of your, like, the medication you're giving and, you know, the sleep patterns or the moaning, groaning, all of those things, then that can help facilitate the communication, which can then ideally evoke the kind of care that you need from the professionals you're working with.
Absolutely. I want each of you to answer a question as we wrap up. Dr. Sankar, what would you like the reader to take away from your book? And I'm going to ask you, CM Cassady, to also answer that question. Whoever wants to go first.
Okay, I'll go. What I hope they take away from this is two things. One, you can't do this by yourself. This is a really, really major undertaking, and you need support. You need someone to help you do this, and you need someone to help you pay attention to your needs. So that's incredibly important. You cannot do this alone. And then two, your best job, that's the best you can do. And like you were saying about caregiver guilt, don't beat up on yourself. Because this is such a major undertaking, what you do is going to be good enough, and you need to be content with that.
I like that. Okay, CM?
Yeah, I just want to actually piggyback on what Dr. Sankar said, because that to me is the most important part, is giving yourself as a caregiver grace. You know, dying at home is a choice for some and not a choice for others who feel like they've almost been forced in this position. Either, you know, they're a caregiver for someone who really wants to die at home and they feel like they need to do that for their parent, or the hospital has said you're being discharged and hospice is your only option now, or maybe, you know, somebody just feels pressure from their other family members because nobody else is caring for them, don't know what to do. You know, we talk about dying at home as this personalized choice, but sometimes it doesn't always feel that way, and certainly not for everyone involved. And so some people, even some people have been planning to do this all along, but some people haven't been planning to do this all along, and they find out that, you know, they needed more respite, or they needed to hire people and they didn't want to, or maybe they couldn't even allow the person to die at home and the person needed to go either into a nursing facility or, you know, a care home or something like that for the very end. All of those situations, the best you can do, like Dr. Sankar said, is the best you can do. And please give yourself some grace, because even if they do die at home, it's never going to be just exactly as you planned, and it's never going to be what you feel like is perfect. You know, we wrote this book to make the process easier, do whatever we can to help people, educate people about dying at home, to make the process easier, but it's never actually going to be easy.
That's true. I wanted
make it a little easier.
Yes, that's true. I wanted Matt to die at home, but it didn't work out that way. He needed 24/7 care near the end. He had to be very heavily medicated. And maybe it was meant to be that way, because I think our son would be very upset if he died at home. And, you know, this might sound woo-woo to some people. I believe Matt knew that it would traumatize Josh, and that's why he died at the hospital. I truly believe that, because I think Josh would have been traumatized if Matt had died. His dad would have died at home. And I really want to thank the both of you, Dr. Sankar and CM Cassady, for writing this book, coming on my show, and sharing your vast knowledge and experience. And this is just, I get excited. You know, sometimes my brain goes ahead of my mouth, or my mouth goes ahead of my brain, but this book is just so phenomenal. Dying at Home, A Family Guide for Caregiving. Andrea Sankar with CM Cassady. Where can people purchase the book?
They can get it on Amazon. They can buy it directly from Johns Hopkins Press. They can request that their library order it, or they can order it from their local bookstore.
And how can people connect with both of you?
We have websites. Each of us has a website, and you can go onto our website and connect with us that way. Mine is AndreaSankarPhD.com, and CM's is, I don't have it in my memory. What is
CM Cassady? Yeah, it's CMCassady.com.
CMCassady.com.
CMCassady.com. Wonderful. Because I always tell the audience there's so much to say about all my guests. I would take up the whole interview, go on their website, take a look at the information. They are both very knowledgeable. You will learn a lot from their website, and I can't recommend this book enough. I am so blessed and grateful to you both and having you both on the show, and to be able to share with people worldwide wonderful resources, because that's my passion, folks. That's why I do the show. People say, why do you do the show, Betsy? I'm here to serve. I was called to serve and help people. And I wish I had information, but the information wasn't available when Matt was alive. And I wished it was. Or if it was available, I didn't know about it because there was nobody talking about it. But here on Chatting with Betsy, I do talk about the taboo, what people think are taboo, but it's not. We need to talk about end of life, folks. We need to be informed. We need to know the dying process and what it looks like. Is it pleasant to talk about? Of course not. But it's necessary. We need to normalize end-of-life conversations because everybody dies, and we need to talk about it. We need to talk about grieving. We need to talk about that process. And it's just very important topics. It may not be pleasant, but it's essential to talk about, and that's just how I feel about it. I'm on my soapbox here. But I want to thank you both for coming on. I really appreciate it. Folks,
well, thank you for having us.
You're welcome. My pleasure. You heard Dr. Andrea Sankar with CM Cassady. All the information about this book and the guests will be in the blog that Jeannie White, who's station manager, writes. Please read the blog. Please share this show to help other people. I'm here to help people. I want people to know about the show, to help them, and I need your help. So please share the show. Tell your friends about it. It's free to subscribe to Chatting with Betsy. I'm on Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon Music, to name a few. Here to be a resource. And the more that people know about resources, the better off they'll be. And that's just really, I feel very strongly about that. And I want to thank Lillian Caldwell, who's CEO of Pastoral Talk Radio Network, that makes this all possible. Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing. And as I always say at the end of my show, in a world where you could be anything, please be kind and shine your light bright, because we need it now more than ever. And if you want to follow me, I'm on Facebook, Betsy E. Wurzel, WURZEL. And if you need a support group, I have hashtag Kick Alzheimer's Ass Movement on Facebook. Until we chat again, be kind and be safe, everyone. Bye-bye now. This is Betsy Wurzel, your host of Chatting with Betsy on Pastoral Talk Radio Network, a subsidiary of Global Media Network, LLC. Bye-bye.